Hi.
Hi, Daniel.
Hi, Hanna. Hi, Marco. So, in June last year, we had the same panel constellation as today, and we had a cool discussion about the role IT plays in a corporation today and how it changed in the last years. What I would talk about today is the question how German companies, from an IT point of view, are somehow different to the Silicon Valley, or because there are so many corporations over there. We heard a lot about the GAFA companies yesterday, like Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple. They are like, they somehow became role models in the last years, and every German corporate was like, yeah, we want to be like them, and we want to copy what they are doing, those methods they are using. But somehow we do things sometimes a bit different, and I think there's not always a good reason for it, but sometimes it makes sense. The way we are doing it today, it makes sense. So that's what I would like to talk about. You are all, of course, again, very welcome to ask questions. Just raise your hand then. But first of all, first question to both of you. What do you think, from an IT point of view, what are the biggest differences between companies like Google, Facebook, Amazon, and big German corporations like OSRAM, for example, from an IT point of view, when it comes to development, software development, application platform development, and stuff like that?
To be honest, I think I need to break a little bit this question into two aspects. So number one, we need to also compare apples with apples. So if you are basically asking me how does Google and maybe even Uber compare with a big German company, it's actually not a fair comparison, because a traditional German company would actually need to be compared with a traditional American company. If you try to really make a good apple-to-apple comparison, you would need to compare maybe, and I'm just saying even still maybe, Google or Microsoft maybe with SAP, for example. Yeah, because truly in Germany we do not really have many technology companies which are as famous as the ones you mentioned. Yeah, and if you look at these companies, and I'm just looking at the apple-to-apple comparison, Microsoft and SAP, truly there is really not a big difference. Why? Because those companies which I'm just mentioning are working with a legacy estate, which actually needs them to transform heavily to achieve the same state as Google and Uber have already achieved. Why? Because they have been setting up themselves in a greenfield approach. And also if you talk to people who actually work at Google and Uber, etc., I think they will realize that as soon as they get into a certain growth and also in a certain size of the company, they will meet and face the same limits as the traditional companies. And I must say, in OSRAM, I would say OSRAM in itself is actually a high-tech company, so the company in itself is as innovative as the companies you just said. Over years, it just specializes in light, but it's technology, it's light. And we are also implementing, yes, methods and tools which, again, agreed, are pretty much driven out of the American scene, which is, the software agile development approach and also lean startup method are actually invented by Stanford universities or, American small technology companies, but not by the big ones.
I think maybe to take a step back and look what is the main difference. And if Hanna is right when she said we cannot compare, that's true. But the main point, I think, is the attitude. If you look at German companies, also startups, they are most heavily working for not to have not success, not to work towards success. And that is so often I see the problem that there's no will to take risk, and if you go to university, you learn, for example, risk management or risk minimization. But maybe the first thing you have to learn as a company and as a entrepreneur, you have to learn that you have to take risks to be successful. That's one point.
I would agree. I don't want to overtake your questions, of course, Daniel, but I would agree. And I would say it's pretty much indeed driven by the culture and also the framework conditions of a nation like Germany, yeah? Because I absolutely agree with you. I mean, at OSRAM, I can only confirm that we have actually now, you know, to really achieve the digital transformation of the whole company, we are not only reinventing the company, you know, from a pure light bulb business into a light solution business, we have also created a new vision, mission, and a strategy, and a new culture, which compose out of new, or basically focusing different values. And one of the values, indeed, in the past was be compliant. Now it's about risk-taking. Yeah, so I think you're absolutely right in that sense. And we need to see, and I think we need to jointly work on the fact that, in particular in the startup scene, which I think is where we need to compare now the both countries, there are definitely deficiencies here in our system. Why? Because if you have started a company and you get bankrupt, you basically fail after the first try, you are dead. You are dead in the market because no investor is happy to invest in you, nor are you accepted that you have actually even tried it. Yeah? And this is the mindset which I believe is not necessary to be changed in the companies. It's to be changed by the system, by the culture, by the way we are thinking. So that's what I would like to add to your comment. I think absolutely agreed.
Maybe one thing to add, I think you said it's important to change the culture, and that is basically the thing I believe in, because we take the wording of the valley often, for example, in the Agile area, and these are strongly coupled with values and attitudes in the valley, but they aren't in Germany. We see it like a project management method or a method, basically, and that is somehow we have to change our minds for that.
In the end, I think it's also a cultural process. You really have to make sure that people are not falling back into old habits as soon as there are problems, because there are many corporations out there that all of them want to have an agile IT, but as soon as an agile project isn't running as it should be, people tend to fall back to their old processes and methodologies. What are you doing, for example, to ensure that people are not falling back into their old habits and that they really think forward?
I think what you just expressed, Daniel, is pretty much, how do I treat a failure, or how do I treat, a not success, basically, yeah? And I think it's really about how do you, how the system reacts to that, which you as a leader can influence to also, I would say, maybe, protect the team, yeah? And I would say it's at least myself being a leader now for 24 years, I think it's the responsibility of the leader to protect the team by appreciate the effort they have put into getting, regardless what the result is, how far they got. And always look, and I would definitely always recommend to do something like a lessons learned, to always understand what has been achieved so far, what have I gained out of it, and what is it that I need to take away to learn from it, but not to punish, yeah? And I think this is definitely something which we need to also learn more from, the American approach and also other countries. Even though I would still say, and there's one thing maybe we will ask in the next question is, I still believe that there's very, very good value in the German way as well, if I just want to use that word. I'm not very nationalistic, but I think it's important also to say that Germany itself has a very good quality-oriented culture. And I think this is also the reason what is really hindering maybe sometimes to do this transformation, getting away from compliance or quality assurance to this risk-taking, yeah? But it's nothing bad, because if you look at, you know, what made Germany successful in the last year and continues to make us successful is actually this stamp you very often have, hopefully still can read in some of our products or German products where it says made in Germany. And actually countries are importing products which only have this stamp. Without this stamp, they would not go for the product. So we should not really, you know, always hide ourselves. I think there is always many, many good things here in this nation, which I think, which also, as I said, needs to be looked at when we talk about transformation and appreciated once again.
Maybe what we learned at the market and from the market is that we have not to play bullshit bingo anymore. Maybe let me tell a short story. Many agencies in our industry are going to pitches, and they're going to companies, and then at the pitch day they're telling them how important this is to develop software in an agile way, what are the agile values, what is the method, and defining that the customer is more a partner than a customer in the relationship. And then, for example, the value communication over contracts, one of the Agile Manifesto values. Three parties telling the same thing, and that's the way to do it, that's important. And then the next thing is the customer comes with a 150-page contract, and everybody's signing it. What does it actually mean? It's like, if you have a child, you know it. If you say the one thing but behave the other way, you are not believed. So that's basically the thing what goes wrong, and we try to overcome this behavior.
I think what I experience often is that corporations always tend to see things black or white. Like, we want an agile IT, so every project from now on is agile, and no other processes or methodologies are allowed anymore. What would you say, is agile always the best way to do a project, or are there projects where agile just doesn't make any sense because other methodologies or approaches are even better, or you just need other things?
Yeah, and again, you're absolutely right. I think you need to be, you know, depending on the. So first of all, I think, you know, the aspiration should always be for an organization, and therefore I think this discussion is important that we are leading it, that actually each organization should aspire to be agile, and not only in projects, not only in IT, basically the whole organization, which comes back to a different maybe, or to a leadership style which has been always there. You know, it's called situational leadership and it's called servant leadership. Has been always there, but it just has not been really played out. And I think this is now enforced more and more. However, there are definitely areas where I do not believe, you know, you can afford being agile, which is, to be honest, where you need to be compliant. In particular, for example, data protection, security. If it's really about ensuring quality, for example, when you do accounting, yeah, when you do quality assurance, these are areas where no way, you know, you cannot just give to your basically your team colleague to say, you know, just behave agile, yeah, because the next failure which is going to happen, you know, your company is under jeopardy because you have just created a product which there is no quality assurance on it, yeah. So I think we need to absolutely differentiate, and this is, and by the way, also within IT, you know, just I would like to differentiate between, you know, software and infrastructure build. Infrastructure build, if you do it in a laboratory stage, you can still try out, you can be agile, you can create a minimal viable product, but when it comes to rollout, sorry to say, there are still dependencies, and as long as you are, for example, not in the cloud with your SaaS product, software as a service product, you still need to maybe a server to be done and set up first before you can even put your software product on top of it. And there is dependency. So you can do it as agile as you want. There is still a waterfall piece of it, which you need to take into account, and you still need to build it into your overall plan.
But one thing to add, maybe it's more about the dependencies are there, but what there's the change inside is you don't have to manage dependencies. That's not the That's the old way to do it. You have to find a way where the units of an organization can communicate and working together towards the goal. So if you come to quality assurance, for example, before rollout or deployment with the hosting part, they have to communicate, and that was often in the past the problem, that many tried to manage this process, but not to let the teams play out their roles. Yeah, and the other thing, Agile, you said, is probably more a tool towards values. That means that it's if you for example make, or the whole Agile world are based on one thing, it's truthness, and it's looking into the mirror. For example, the retrospectives or the 2 weeks, not a reporting game, playing a reporting game every 2 weeks. It's really looking into the problems and enabling organizations to change and to learn. That is basically the thing, and that is often mistreated in a way like doing reporting every 2 weeks, which means actually you don't get the full power of this framework or of these ideas.
But I would object, if you're saying that there is no reporting in Agile. I mean, the backlog reports you have, they are just pinned on the wall. They are just not maybe put as a printed paper. But overall, my experiences in Agile environments, you do even more rigorous planning and more reporting than you have ever seen in standard approach. I hope that's the way you are still also.
No, because I see reporting as a bottom-up process, reporting from bottom up, but the reporting in Agile is meant to be a tool for the team, a tool for the management to improve the process, for example. And that is basically a difference, because in former times it was you report to the top, and then you get orders back how to deal with the situation. And that is the way we have to change the thinking.
If you could do cherry picking and look at corporations in the US and the Silicon Valley, and at companies in big companies in Germany as well, if you would be able, from a cultural point of view, to just take the best things from both worlds, what do you think? What could we learn from companies like Microsoft or Amazon, Apple? And what could they learn from us?
I mean, I think it's really it's very challenging question. So thank you for that. The point is that I think, first of all, just to also remind us, Microsoft undergoes the same transformation under Satya Nadella as any other company. Yeah, they have also been in the old trap of waterfall or not listening to the customers. So it's not that they are basically really rigorously doing that. I think what I would, I'm just looking maybe at Amazon. Amazon is a company which I actually have very much closely worked with in the last years, and also exchanging best practices around leadership, etc. And what I really like about Amazon is that Jeff Bezos, he is basically a customer-obsessed maniac. Yeah, I think we can say that. And he actually gives guidance to the teams by setting up, I think it's like 13 leadership values. He is actually, they are also openly publicly made on in the internet. And he basically, he's guiding the organization with exactly this rule set. And every person who is coming new on board needs to go through the interview, which is following exactly these values. And if you don't fit there, then you are not in. Yeah. So I think this is where I believe Jeff is actually really focusing on giving, so to say, like guidance instead of orders. On the other hand, he is very rigorous in execution. Yeah. And what I also observe, however, is that when you talk to the suppliers and also to customers, they are also very, very rigorous around partnership. They squeeze out the last penny out of the provider and maybe calling in wrongly or rightly in the light of or in the interest of the customer. And I would think this is something, and by the way, the products are not always the great, and by the way, I must also say when we always talk about Amazon-like look and feel, I personally don't really like that look and feel that great, yeah, because they are actually much better customer-focused front ends, which I believe are much easier to understand, etc. So I think if I picked it from both worlds, I would say, take this customer obsession, the right side of it, understand how we can give guidance and the right values to the organization without making it order-like, but still observe, so to say, the human being, the appreciation for the whole ecosystem, not only the customer, but also what impact does it have on suppliers and partners. Plus, and I would say again, the quality aspiration, which I do not always see, which maybe is right in that sense, you achieve 80-20%, but sometimes it's not really, meeting the customer's expectation. I think it's just maybe then driven via volume. So Amazon is very successful because they have created this ecosystem. They have a large amount. They are basically well bundled in the market. They are almost monopolists. Yeah, and this is, I think, is the downside of it. I'm rather for having more diversity, allow for more diversity, allow also for a win-win situation, and don't squeeze out the last penny.
Yeah, probably also to say, define goals and not the way. That is basically the thing which appreciates humans in work most. If you give them the possibility to influence what they do and how they do it, and to reach goals. So that is maybe one thing, and that requires to change the organizational structures heavily. And if you look at at Amazon, for example, there's the pizza rule. So no team is bigger sized than who can take a pizza. So. And this means that you have a really big companies, but the units where it is based on are very small. And so this is a transformation thing. And the other thing is maybe the thinking about, stop thinking about projects, think about goals also in this area. Because if you define projects, and you can do it, for example, okay, for HR software or integrating something, pretty sure that's that you can do a project, but on your own product, you have to understand that you don't develop a product and then stop developing and selling and nothing ever happens. You have to continuously find market fit and new market fits, and that is one thing I think many companies are really doing wrong.
I would even add to that. I think it's not only about guidance, goals. I think it's also about the sense of being, or raison d'être, as you call it. Yeah. I think last year you had a lady here who was talking exactly about that, who is helping companies to define the raison d'être. Because when you look at Microsoft, what Satya Nadella currently does, and it's definitely, he also says it in his book, hit refresh, basically it's really about a renovation of the company, where he is actually talking to his leaders about why did we actually start up with Microsoft? What was actually our original purpose of being, yeah? And I would like to be, I'm also proud to say that I'm working for a company which is going the same way, and I don't want to be too ignorant here, but actually with our new vision and mission and strategy, we are talking exactly in that direction, meaning we are talking about light, OSRAM, basically providing light for a better world with exploiting the possibilities of light to improve people's lives. And I think for that, if you ask any of the company's employees, if they would be willing to recommend a company like OSRAM to the neighbors, I'm sure they will do so, because the sense of being, is the right one. At least it feels right, and I think everybody can. It resonates with many people.
Do we already have a question in the audience, as we have like 5 minutes left? Maybe someone wants to ask something. No? Okay. You talked a lot about purpose. And we actually, Monica was on stage before our lunch break, so she talked about that again, and she is maybe somewhere in the audience. I'm not sure. I think what is the problem with that whole discussion often is that you have it on the top level. Management level has understood there we have to talk about purpose. They did a strategy, and they know what it's about. But what can you really do to make the people, the employees in the end, understand what it is really about?
Yeah, so we call it, walk to talk, which means that actually as a leader you need to really be the role model and display exactly the behavior you expect you people to behave at. Yeah, so for me it's of absolutely utmost importance that we are conducting on regular cases, we are conducting lessons learned, that we are actually talking about what is the benefit we have achieved, what is it that we can learn from it. And also, as I said before, really protect our people by talking to the board to say, guys, this project actually has undergone a major transformation. The team has learned a lot. I just give you an example. This week, I have met our new COO for one of our units, who is actually new in the business. He's not new in the business, in the industry, but he's new in our business. And he was complaining about the fact that actually we are not doing, he's responsible for production, manufacturing. He was basically complaining about the fact that he doesn't see much around predictive maintenance, respectively. He doesn't see much about analytics and how can we apply AI also in production to optimize the production. And I said, it's not true. We actually have some good cases. Let me share that with you. I have invited the people who actually have on the ground work on some of these cases. And we presented these cases to him, and he was basically, I would call it, slapping everybody in this room by saying, this is old stuff. Whatever you have built out there, it's all there already. You can get it off the shelf. It was nonsense you have done. And I said it's not true, because A, if it was so, why wasn't it there in the last years? And the reason was actually that whatever he was asking for, it was there maybe since the 2 years, but the reality is that the machines which would need to be integrated with this software are older than the software which is actually available now. Yeah. So even the integration will take massive investments, and you need to be basically then careful whether you want to invest or not. Yeah. So what I said actually to the team, which of course was devastated after that meeting, let's be very clear, devastated. And I just talked to the team, and I'm just really asking, how do you feel? And they were saying, yeah, I'm not sure, whether I have done anything good or right or not. And I said, you have done everything absolutely right. You have focused on the right things. You have picked up, the demand. Yes, we need to then obviously next time check whether there is a subordinate who believes that he can know it better. But if you then find out that it's actually the best way to do it because it's fit for purpose, it doesn't invest in the whole environment, but only for a specific case, it's still worthwhile doing because I have a benefit and it's less costly, then we still can do it. We just need to demonstrate it more and make it more visible. That's the lessons learned. But anything else, we understand now how analytics works, we understand how machine learning works, we understand how to deal with the demand. All good learnings. And this is what I expect from all of our leaders to really appreciate.
Actually, you had the best question you have ever given a team. How do you feel? And that is what I've learned. Actually, for example, we bootstrapped our company, and in the beginning, I was CTO before, and I see what too much work on the people is doing with the people and doing with the product shit at the end. But and I told them only work 8 hours. Take your time for different things than coding. And I didn't understand because they worked longer and longer, and I said, go home. I sent them home actually, but they behaved in their way. And we had sometime a coach, we were discussing about values, and it's an interesting thing. It's like you put your values. German companies tend to say values are important. It makes the product shiny and stuff like that. Or it's important for recruiting. No, it is not important for recruiting and marketing. It is important for the functioning of the organization. And that means, for example, we introduced an anti-stress management. And we discovered when we ask the people, where do you have stress? You get the best answers for your company. That's not the solution, but the first thing you learn from your company people. So you learn that there's stress, and you look, why is there stress? And then you can analyze it, and then you can starting to deal with it, and you get much value out of such things.
Thank you. Just in time. Perfect. Thank you for joining us.